Hello again, Derek from Tomcat Gas Training, and welcome to this video on how I'm going to save you some money. Anyway, I guess you're interested now with all the hiking electric and gas prices, so let's get on with it and find out exactly how one of these little things connected to your boiler is going to save you some cash. Now let's start first by talking about these smart thermostats. Now this video is going to be talking about a specific stat, the climapro2 from Glowworm, which is a smart thermostat but isn't connected to the internet. It's a smart thermostat because it talks to the boiler. So just because a thermostat is connected to the internet, yes, it makes it smart, but it doesn't automatically make it smart to talk to the boiler. So, as this video goes through, you will find that you will need a specific thermostat which will be able to talk to the boiler, which will give you your biggest fuel savings. It won't just also save you with fuel, it could save you with electricity, and it could also prolong the life of the boiler. So picking the correct thermostat right at the very beginning if you're buying a new boiler is key to whether you're going to save energy, you're going to save electricity, you're going to cut down on your CO2, and you're going to prolong the life of your boiler. So hopefully now you know, just because a smart thermostat connects to the internet, it doesn't make it that it's going to save you money. Even those fancy ones when they know where you are with the geo fencing thing, so they know exactly where you are and they can turn your boiler on and off before you get home or go out. They're not all brilliant. Anyway, that's waffling done. Can we get on with it now? So, how's this Glowworm Climber Pro 2 radio frequency programmable room stat going to save us some cash then? Well, it's all about setting our room temperatures to a given temperature, normally 20 degrees, and adjusting our flow temperatures on our boiler to 50-60 degrees is going to save us quite a bit of money. Now what they say is about 90% of condensing boilers out there in the market are not condensing and not saving us money. And about 80% of customers are not using their room thermostats or thermostatic radiator valves correctly, and the boilers aren't set up correctly for the size of the house. So we're actually wasting a lot of energy because we've not got one of these installed or we're not using them properly. So in this video what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you which boilers from Glowworm these little Climber Pro things can be connected to and how we're going to do it. Now these are only about 120 quid including VAT to buy, and they're pretty damn cheap to get installed as well, as we're going to be looking at in this video. So we might have to spend a little money to save some money. So let's get on with this video and let me show you exactly how these Climber Pro stats are installed and how they're going to save you this money. Now this boiler is a Glowworm Flexicom 24CX, and it was made way back in 2015, and this Climber Pro is actually working this boiler. So let's have a look first and see how this can be connected to a Flexicom. Now this Glowworm Flexicom is connected to the electrical supply by this plug. So I have removed the plug and I've checked that I've got safe isolation. I've also carried out my safe to touch test to make sure I don't get electrocuted touching the thing. So that's out of the way. Now this Flexicom, the front cover is part of the combustion chamber. So you've got to be gas safe registered to be able to take this front cover off. But with the Flexicom, you don't need to take the front cover off to be able to install the thermostat and this receiver sender unit. So there is, if I just pull this down here, there is a little plug. This little plug is connected to the receiver sender and to the power supply, which then feeds into the boiler. So with the Flexicom, you technically don't need to be gas safe registered to be able to install the climapro2 to the boiler. So let's have a look and see how I've actually connected the low voltage receiver to our plug. So you can see the plug and the receiver. So if we open this plug up, there's just one screw holding it in there, which I've taken out. And now you can see the plug is in two sections. So this section here is our low voltage. This section here is our 230 volts. So if I just tip it up, you can see on the plug, it's actually lettered. So we start right to left on this F here, means Thermostat. The R is our switched live wire, so from our room stat. The next one, L, is our live, then it's neutral, then it's earth. And then these two here are for weather comp, so outside weather sensor. If we look on this one, this is our 24 volt. So the first one you can see here, 0V, that is our 24 volt switching between these two end ones. And you can see the red link needs to stay in, even though we're using this sensor. So the two wires from the sensor go into the E-bus connection and into the OV. And it doesn't really matter which way round you put these coloured wires. I know I've got them brown and blue, and they come brown and blue with this 0.75mm cable, but it makes no odds. Continuity is nothing with these. You can put them either or way. So that's how you need to wire up this Glowworm Flexicom with using this plug. Now this is also the same plug what's used in the stored boiler as well. So you could do exactly the same setup if you was using the Glowworm stored boiler. Now I just want to talk about this E-bus and exactly what it is and why Glowworm use it. So let's find out all about E-bus. Now, the thing what makes these room stats stand out more than a standard room stat is what's called opentherm. What's opentherm then? Well, basically opentherm is a language which was invented by Honeywell, and they sold it to the Opentherm Association for £1 English in 1996 to allow all the boiler manufacturers to use this language of opentherm. Was that a good idea, selling it for £1? Well, they had their heads screwed on, didn't they, Honeywell? Selling it for £1 so everybody can use it. And they were the only ones making stats at the time what use opentherm. Quite crafty. But there were some manufacturers, Glowworm, Valent, Worcester, who decided not to use opentherm and to invent their own language. So Valent use E-bus. Glowworm, part of Valent Group, use E-bus. Worcester use M-bus. Ariston use bus as well, so they use their own language. So the stat to communicate with the boiler uses this language, which allows the stat to talk to the boiler to make the boiler more efficient and work at its most optimum. As long as you wire it up right and you use the right stats. Now, even though all boilers can use what they call opentherm, because Glowworm and Valent use a different language, you can't connect third-party stats to their bus system. And it worked perfectly. Now, some stats do connect onto it, but they still don't talk the perfect language. It's a bit like my French. Anyway, we won't go there. But that's why a lot of the manufacturers do like separate connections for third-party controls. On the Glowworm one we've just been looking at, that's the 24 volt low voltage switching. So you could use third-party controls going to those rather than to the bus connections. So even though all boilers can speak opentherm, they don't all speak the same language. So be wary of that. So my advice to you, whether you're an installer or you're a customer, is always use the stats made by the manufacturer for the boiler, because they will talk the right language. It makes it incredibly easy to install, and sometimes it can increase the warranties on the boilers. So eBus, MBus, bus and opentherm are all the same thing. It's just a language for the stats to be able to speak to the boiler to make them more efficient. Hope that helps. Other things besides room stats which can actually save you money on your central heating system is having a magnetic filter fitted, and also the water quality that's flying around your central heating system. If you've got a dirty central heating system and haven't got a magnetic filter and you haven't got any inhibitor in your system, then your system is going to sludge up, it's going to block up, and it's going to cost you more money to heat the same amount of water as what it would do if we had a magnetic filter taking all the magnetite out and we had the chemicals to stop rust happening. So it's just not thermostats and thermostatic radiator valves what save you money, it's the actual water what's flying around your central heating system can also save you money. Now let me try and explain exactly the difference between a standard room stat and time clock and these eBus opentherm stats. So we have a graph. On this side we've got temperatures, on this side we've got times. So this is with a room stat first. You've set your time clock to bring your boiler on between 6 and 10 in the morning and 6 and 10 in the afternoon. You've not done anything else. Now you've also set your boiler to its maximum temperature of 82 degrees. Okay, so the boilers are going to come on at 6. So 6 o'clock, depending on what temperature your house has dropped down to. So we're going to say it's the depth of winter and it's -10 outside. So the house has dropped to about 5 degrees, because we don't really want a house going lower than 5 degrees because water starts to freeze at 4. So it's starting at 5, and remember the boiler's set at 80 degrees or 82 degrees for the flow temperature, and we've set the room temperature to 20 degrees using a standard stat. What happens is that boiler turns on and it gives its full kilowatts, so whether it's 30, 24, 35, 50, because we can now buy 50 kilowatt combis, but say it's given the full kilowatts of 30 kilowatts. So it's going to go, whoa, straight up there up to the 20 degrees C at full burn. But what's going to happen is, because if you've oversized your radiators as well, what will happen is the room temperature will continue to rise, because the room stat, once it gets up to 20 degrees, is an on-off switch. But it's going to continue to rise up, and it could get to 25, it could even go to 30 degrees, because everything's massively oversized. And then the temperature will start to drop back down again. As it's getting towards the 20 degrees, it will shoot past the 20 degrees, and then the stat will click on about 18 degrees and do the same again. So then it's going to shoot up again, and it could even go higher this time. So you're ending up with the time it's on doing this till it gets to 10 AM and then completely shuts off. And then you go off to work. Now what's going to happen is the temperature now is going to plummet. It's going to start to come down again while you're off at work or school or whatever you're doing. And it's going to get near this 5 degrees again till it comes on at 6 o'clock. And then it's going to do exactly the same thing again. It's going to massively overshoot and undershoot. And then as soon as it gets to 10 o'clock, it's then going to drop back down again and continue down from here. Now, massively wasting energy because the room stat only knows when to turn on and off. It doesn't know what the temperature of the rooms are, and because you've got the boiler set at 82 degrees, the boiler doesn't know. It's just going to give you the full kilowatts. Now, the average kilowatts in a property in the UK is about 8 kilowatts, and if you've got a boiler what's doing 30 kilowatts on heating, it's going to massively overshoot. So you're wasting loads of energy, even though you've got a time clock and you've got a room stat. This is slightly exaggerated, but that's what can happen. Now then, if you use an open thermostat, we'll do that in red. So, one thing here is with the stat, you can do a setback temperature for the night. And in the depth of winter, you don't really want your house going lower than, well, between 10 and 15 degrees. I don't allow my house to go lower than 15 during the depths of winter. Obviously in summer, your setback temperature will be down to 5 degrees because the lowest they'll go is 5 degrees. So, say we're in the depths of winter, we want it to come on at 6 AM, but it's been on all night because we've got a setback temperature of 15 degrees. So our starting point, instead of being down at 5 degrees, could actually be a starting point of 15 degrees. So all night our stat has been kept at 15 degrees, so our house has been quite warm. Can I just jump in here? What I really mean when I'm saying the boiler's been on all night, I don't mean it's been running all night. I mean it's just been capable of running all night with the setback temperature. Your boiler might not even come on, especially in spring and autumn time, but in the middle of winter when we've got really cold temperatures, your boiler might come on for a little short time to get it back up to that 15 degrees. So I'm not saying it's running all the time, because that would be a waste of energy. And I'm also saying when you go out, it's not on all the time, but your setback temperature is you set it to a lower temperature. I hope I'm not confusing you. Anyway, let's get back to this. Then what happens when it gets to the 6 AM, it starts to gradually increase the flow temperature. When it starts to get near the given temperature, it then starts to reduce the flow temperature. So it's trying to keep the boiler on all the time. So it will then nicely trickle just under the 20 degrees. When it starts getting to the going off time, remember it isn't really an off time, it then starts to drop down. Now if you've got a modern house built after 2008, it should be well insulated. So you won't have massive heat loss. So you can actually reduce your flow temperature on these boilers as well to 50 degrees. If you've got a house like a 1930s semi, then you might have to set your flow temperature to 60 degrees rather than 50. But the lower you can get that flow temperature and still keep a nice warm house, the more money you're going to save. So this start while you're not in is keeping it above 15 degrees, because if it drops too low, so say we suddenly have a sharp dip in temperature because it's gone really cold, the boiler will bring it back on and try to keep that temperature round about the 15 degrees. Then when it comes back to the coming on temperature, it then starts to bring it back on and keep it just at this 20 degrees, and then obviously when it turns off, it drops back down and comes back to the beginning again. So you're using far less energy because you're not trying to bring the heating on full whap all the time. Your house is kept at a nice warm temperature, and this will save you an absolute fortune. Now in the UK, we've not got a mindset for doing this. Our mindset's for doing that. Oh, it's cold, turn that heating on for half an hour. And then let your house go cold again. It's gone cold again, turn it on again for another half an hour. Oh, leave it for an hour this time. No, that's not what we want to do. Now, standard room stats don't anticipate what the temperature is. They don't know what the temperature is on the inside, and they certainly don't know what the temperature is outside. But opentherm stats connected to weather compensation as well, saves you even more money, because it knows then what the outside temperature is. Now, some stats actually use weather stations to take a triangular of the temperature outside. They're not as good as actually using an outside weather temperature stat. So let's have a look at the stat what Glowworm can give you to work alongside this Climber Pro 2. The Glowworm wireless outdoor sensor intelligently communicates the outside temperature to the rest of the system to provide weather compensation, which will reduce the flow temperatures to maximise efficiency. The sensor is small and discreet, and no wiring is required between the unit and the rest of the system. It actually works on indirect sunlight, so it should be on a north facing wall, which will recharge the small PV cells, so no batteries are required. Now, before installation of the outside sensor, it will need to be paired with the receiver. So you take this rubber bung off the receiver and press the little red button inside and hold it for 5 seconds. This will now start to try and pair with the outdoor sensor. On the back of the sensor there is another button to press, so you press that one. Once it's paired, it will flash green and everything's tickety-boo and ready to go. You can now install the sensor outside, and remember, on a north facing wall. Now, actually, once you've paired the outside weather comp stat to the Climber Pro 2, we need to set it up. It's not just a matter of pairing them and that's it, away you go. So first thing we'll need to do is pick our flow temperature. So say we've picked 50 degrees. We will also have to find out what our average maximum coldest temperature outside is during the winter. So I've picked -5 degrees. So if we look here on this chart, which is given to you with the outside weather comp, so you can see down here is actually the flow temperature of the boiler, and if we look along here, this is the outside temperature. So here you can see I've picked 50 degrees for my flow temperature, and here you can see I've picked -5 for my outside temperature. So you can see I've drawn a line across from my 50 degrees up from my -5 degrees, and you can see it's fallen between 0.6 and 1. Now in this situation, because of where it's fallen, I would probably pick 1. And you would think that would be it once you've inputted that number into your Climber Pro 2. It's not as easy as that. It's a bit hit and miss when you're setting up these curves, because the customer might find in the first year they struggle to get the temperatures to keep the house warm if you haven't set this curve up properly, or you haven't set your flow temperature up properly. So it's a bit hit and miss, because you don't know what the U values of the house are, you don't know how much insulation is, and you've not really worked out the radiators because you haven't put them in. So when you're retrofitting a boiler, it's pretty hard to set this curve up first, but practice doesn't always make perfect. So when you go back for the first service, you might have to make a few adjustments, but you can tell the customer they can adjust the flow temperatures on their boiler to be able to get the heat out they require during the really cold days. So that's setting up the outside weather comp. Now let me just quickly show you the handset or the thermostat. First thing, because it's a blank screen, if we press any button it will wake up. It's telling us it's Wednesday, it's 10:31, the date is the 6th of the 4th 2022, the temperature in the room is 20 degrees, and I've set my boiler to 18 degrees up till 3 this afternoon. So we have back arrow, OK, menu, and up and down. So if we want to gain access into the menu, we press menu. We can now see the heating's on, the hot water's on, holiday function is off. Parameters, we'll look at that in a minute. Now, heating on and off, so we can turn the heating on and off from the start without going to the boiler. We can also change the water temperature as well from here. But if we access the heating, You can see it's on, off. We can then use the down arrow to go to the programs, press OK. We can go on to setup, press OK. So you can see we've got dates on here where we can pick individual days to do our times, or we can copy a day and do it all week. We can even do 7 days a week. We can do 5 days and 2 days. We can press OK, and then you can see we've got the times and the temperatures. So this is where we can do our setback temperatures, depending on what times we choose. If we want to come out of it, we go back, back, and back again, and then if we scroll down we can go to the hot water, press OK, and I've got the hot water set at 45 degrees here, so no matter what the setting is on the boiler will just give you 45 degrees. I've tried it, it works. We've got it set to a maximum of 60 on the boiler, and I think it goes up to 65. It goes between 38 and 65. And you can go into the installer menu and preset the water. So no matter what you put in here, it can't go over a certain figure. Again, if we go out. So if we go down to this parameters and press OK, this is where we can do our date, our time, our language. We can do lock the keypad, we can change the displays. There's loads of stuff we can do here. So if I wanted to change the date, just press OK. It comes up, which way do we want it? Day, month, year. And check it. If we want it, we press OK. We can then go and change the year. So I can go up or down, press OK. I can change the month and so on, and I can change the date. Again, if we want to come out, come back up. And also, once you've paired the outside sensor, so the weather comp, once you've paired that with the handset, you can actually change everything for the outdoor sensor from the handset as well. You can even set the curve up, which we need to set up. I think it comes set as 1.6, if I remember correctly. Obviously, we haven't got weather comp connected to this, so I can't show you that because you don't get it unless you pair it. So your curve would be set from here as well. So that's just a quick guided tour of how good this handset is and how easy it is to navigate and how easy it is to use. Now, if we want to install this receiver onto this Glowworm Energy 30C, which is 2-year-old, you're going to need to be gas safe registered, because we've got to take the front cover off, and the front cover is part of the combustion unit. So I've undone the 2 screws underneath there and taken the cover off. So this is the control panel, and to access the control panel, obviously no power to this boiler, but you would have to isolate the power and do all your other safety touch tests and all your other electrical safety tests, because we're going into the PCB. We drop the front cover and we can see our electrical connections are here. So our E-bus connections are these 2 bottom here. Now the 24-volt link needs to stay in, and this is your burner on and off link. So those 2 links need to stay in. So if you wondered why the receiver has got a flat bottom and these little tabs sticking on the side, well, it's because it actually slides in here. So there is 2 little runners and it clips into there. Then we take the cable, and the cable has to come down to here. You can cut this cable, it doesn't have to stay this length, but it comes through this section here and goes into here where it gets clipped in. We can now wire these in, and again, it doesn't matter which way round we put these wires into the stand. So let's open the cable. Make sure the end's good. I'm just going to put it blue first. Tighten that one up. And then the bottom one. And then all we have to do is make sure that is out of the way. And clipped in. And we can close the cover up. So when we put the cover back on the boiler, you don't actually see the stat, and it will still work through the cover of this boiler. So that's wiring the receiver into this 2-year-old Glowworm Energy 30C. Shall we have a look at another one then? Now, to install this climapro2 sender or receiver on this 2012 Glowworm Easycom is slightly different than the other two we've done. First of all, this is our 230 volt side of the board, and this is our low voltage side of the board. So we only have to open that little flap. Also, there is a handy little plug here to make it easier to wire up. Again, the unit slides on the top, but we got a bit of a problem here because the wire can't get inside there unless we snap this little made section out here for the wire to go in. So that's what we're going to do first. So I just need to get my long nose pliers, put it onto the knockout and snap it off. So you can see it broke off quite easily. It does say score down the sides first with a Stanley knife, but I didn't do that. Anyway, that now allows the cable to go into that inside there. Now again, we've got our 24 volt RT connections first. Then the next two are our bus ones, and then the next ones are our weather comp. So that's the plug. Now the screws in this are also slightly smaller than the last two we've done, so I've got to use a smaller screwdriver to get in there for the screw heads. But again, it's just a matter of putting the two wires into the bus connections, and again, it doesn't matter which way around you do it. Sliding the plug into the socket. Getting the excess cable again, you can cut that off if you want, but obviously I haven't. And that's it. So that's done on the Glowworm Easycom. Now, hopefully you have seen from this video how important room stats are. Now, don't get me wrong, if you haven't got a room stat, and you haven't got a time clock on your central heating system, and you put a standard room stat and a time clock on the system, you're going to save yourself some money. You can't believe how many houses we go to and there actually isn't any room stats. There's just time clocks and TRVs. Also, if you're using your thermostatic radiator valves wrong, so your thermostatic radiator valves might have settings from 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest setting, which will be 5 degrees, and 5 being permanently on. So you need to read the manufacturer's instructions for the thermostatic radiator valve to see which is the best setting for which room that thermostatic radiator valve is in. But if you do have a thermostat in that room, then you need to put your setting on 5, because the thermostat will do the room temperature, not your thermostatic radiator valve. Now, just a word of warning. Turning your thermostatic radiator valve onto 5 won't make your room heat up any quicker. Because remember, the thermostatic radiator valve there is to regulate the temperature in the room, not make it hotter. It's the flow of the water and the heat of the water going through the radiator and the size of the radiator what makes your room heat up quicker, not your thermostatic radiator valve. Also, turning this up to 30 won't make your room heat up any quicker either. It'll just make your room get too hot. Anyway, as you could see, this stat was not connected to the internet, but Glowworm do internet stats. They do the MyGo, or is it MiGo? Or whatever. Anyway, MiGo, they do the MyGo, which is basically the same as this, but you can operate it from your phone. And they've brought out a couple of new stats called the MySet and the MyPro. Now, the MySet is a 2-channeled fancy stat which can work a Y plan and an S plan, because the ones you've been looking at today are all for combis. And the MyPro isn't being released till summer 2022, so summer this year. That does 3 separate channels, or 3 separate zones. So new stats to look forward to from Glowworm. But loads of other ways you can save energy throughout your house, not just from your heating system. Things like turning standby lights off on TVs, turning the lights off when you go out of the room, keeping curtains closed to stop the heat getting out. Loads of different stuff you can do, and if you want to find out more interesting facts on how to save energy, then why don't you watch this video here? And I apologise for being naked in it. Anyway, thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one, guys. Cheers.